CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
Other wildlife in our midst tonight. Saanich police are warning you to keep a close eye on children and pets after reports of a cougar spotted in Rithit's Bog. It is the third possible sighting in just 4 days. Police say a woman was walking her dog last night when she saw the big cat roaming a path not far from Emily Carr Drive. Conservation officers say they haven't had any other reports of cougars in that area, but they do want you to remain vigilant.
We haven't had any calls since then, and we hadn't had any calls leading up to it in that area there, so I'm not sure if it was really a cougar there or not. People should always be aware that it's possible they could encounter a cougar, and they should know what to do if they see one, which is to just face the animal at all times, slowly back away to a position of safety, and never try and approach it, and also don't try and run away from it.
Conservation officers say there's a lot of wildlife in Rithit's Bog. It's possible another animal may have been mistaken for the big cat. It's quite common to see wildlife, especially deer, going through the bog area because it's so close to Mount Doug Park. Well, you might have noticed it's a little hazy right now. That's not entirely uncommon in BC during the summer and the fire season, but the source of the smoke that made for a spectacular sunset on parts of the island last night is half a world away. Uncontrolled wildfires burning across Siberia are producing so much smoke that air traffic is restricted over parts of Russia right now. And there is so much of that smoke that the haze has drifted across the North Pacific into British Columbia. Here's a look at it in Russia. Heavy, thick smoke has settled over a number of cities, and that's making breathing difficult for millions of people. Russian media attribute the spread of the fires to the very dry conditions and the heat they're experiencing. A number of airports in Siberia have had to close because of the smoke. There are reports that the smoke is being felt as far away as the northern part of the province, southern British Columbia as well. And of course, we're getting reports on Vancouver Island. And it may get worse before it gets better. Well, from hot chips to a sandwich you can't sink your teeth into, RCMP in Nanaimo have nabbed a man who satisfied his late-night craving by stealing 2 breakfast sandwiches from a 7-Eleven. But it turns out they're plastic. They were for display only, but the store wanted them back. They're worth about $70 a piece. Mounties tracked the sandwich snatcher to a nearby hotel, and the plastic sandwiches were taken back to the 7-Eleven without a bite. Well, Esquimalt Council opened the floor last night asking for your input on the future of policing in that community following a decision by the province to reject Esquimalt's bid to forsake Vic PD for the RCMP.
End of July.
There were about 50 people who showed up to weigh in on the dispute, and the mediator's report outlining ways to improve the relationship between Esquimalt and Victoria Police. Councillors are disappointed that the province dismissed the request for RCMP service, and Esquimalt is now looking to take the Justice Minister to court to overturn that decision. Council refuses to accept the mediator's report, instead voting to receive it as information only to be discussed at another meeting in August.
We don't want to go into something in a rushed fashion. We want to be able to make the right decisions, and we need to be able to digest what we've heard from the public. And we want to hear more from the public, and we want to have further in-depth discussion on some of these recommendations.
The Esquimalt Mayor has also asked for both the RCMP and Victoria Police to make their proposals for policing the municipality public. In politics tonight, NDP leader Adrian Dix and his party continue to lead as a new Angus Reid poll shows voter support for the New Democrats near the 50% mark. The party has 45% of popular voter support, although that is down from the last poll, 5%. Premier Christy Clark and the BC Liberals are trailing the NDP by more than 20 points, with 23% of support from decided voters. But the news is not all good for the NDP. The party has come down from the last survey, and the losses were almost evenly picked up by the Conservatives, who at 22% are at 22%, and the Greens at 8%. Angus Reid says the poll also unveils a surprising gender gap.
The one thing that still strikes me is the gender gap. We had a situation where a lot of people assumed that by having a woman as our sitting head of government, the BC Liberals would do very well and would court the female vote, which usually goes to the NDP. If anything, the gender gap has become even bigger now. We have 51% of decided voters who are women saying that they would vote for the NDP. The Liberals are now in 3rd place with only 17%. So there's a 3-to-1 margin of women voting for the NDP and not for the BC Liberals.
The poll also shows only 28% of people now say that they approve of Christy Clark's performance as BC Premier. The BC Supreme Court has quashed an Nanaimo City bylaw that was an effort to require cell phone companies to pay into the 911 system with a levy similar to the one placed on landlines. Nanaimo says more than half, 53% of its 911 calls come from cell phones. The city is disappointed. It says it will review that Supreme Court ruling with its lawyer.